Ich freue mich, dass wir heute in dieser Episode von Maikes Rausenzeit einen wunderbaren Gast haben. Und zwar ist er AI-Expert, allerdings englischsprachig, und daher werde ich jetzt auch direkt wechseln. My guest today in this episode is Rupert Breheny, and he's an AI expert, well, a long time at Google and now founder of Cobalt AI, as well as AI consultancy. And I'm happy, who would have thought that we're going to talk about AI, the disruptive side of AI and the future with AI. Hello, Rupert. Glad you were here. Well,
hello, Mika. Thank you. And thank you for the kindness of English. I really appreciate that.
My first question is always the same. My first question is, could you please tell the audience a bit about yourself? Who are you? What are you doing?
Sure. So as you covered in the introduction, I've just finished a 16-year stint at Google as an engineer, which I greatly enjoyed. But going further back, I actually come from a family of artists. So I was the black sheep. I ran away and did science, but it's never left me behind. So I loved this combination. Something that excited me about AI and generative AI in particular is just with this beautiful nexus of art and science. Just technology is taking us very creative new places. And I had to follow my heart on that one and dived in and started my own company a year ago and have never been more happier, I think, productive and just learning new stuff, which is always a good place to be.
So AI or technology and art is as well not kind of totally something different. Technology and what we see today with AI is kind of an art, no? Or am I going too far with that, in your opinion?
Both directions are good. I think there are those that invent the technology and those that deploy it in interesting ways. Now, I've certainly met artists that could be described as, creative technologists. These amazing things, whether it be like virtual reality or even just some of the, Renaissance art that were using optics as, people like Da Vinci were working on lenses and projecting and like early versions of compositing in Photoshop, stuff like this.
Yeah.
There was a grid, vanishing points, that kind of mix of art and science. But at the same time, engineers who are poets, they have this lyrical way of coding and expressing their ideas and bringing them to fruition. So I totally agree. I'm on board with this idea that you can be an artistic scientist or a scientific artist.
Yeah. That's something would like to talk about as well later on in the podcast, how AI affects as well the more creative or artistic jobs or industries. But first, I would like to talk about AI within a company. Where do you see the biggest disruptions coming? Is it in different departments, or is it in skills, or is it the way we do our daily job? What's in your opinion?
So that's actually the trillion-dollar question right now, because a lot of companies, a lot of consultancy firms are trying to get to grips with this just now, no least of which is Google. It wasn't lost on me that a wave of layoffs occurred around the time that we saw these emerging large language models. And if you're following the industry, tools like Devin that will automatically create code, or things like the Canvas, as some of the large language models have, you can get some really good, solid code out of ChatGPT, Gemini, Anthropic of Claude, and they're sort of good entry-level coders, which makes you wonder, well, what happens to the traditional human entry-level coders? Is there a ladder now for people coming up through internships or apprenticeships? And I mean, bluntly, if these systems learn faster than humans do on their computer science courses, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say it changes everything. My experience in the technical field is, yes, it's going to have a big effect on very disruptive industries that took a lot of satisfaction from disrupting other people's industries. And there was a certain, I think, lack of foresight when they were surprised that the same happened to theirs. So it'd be a little bit of schadenfreude.
Do you see that actually nowadays already companies are picking up on that and taking, on one hand, the employees, they take them, let's say, by the hand and by training and giving them special, training sessions or special, talk sessions to talk about maybe as well, on the other hand, fears that maybe the employees have. Did you kind of see through your experience different ways how companies are dealing with that now with the employees, with all that what's happening?
I honestly think a lot of companies are struggling with this just now. That was partly why I founded even Cobalt. This idea that we could be a friend to people in the industry that were struggling with some of this because it's uncharted territory. And I think for a lot of people, they've lumped it into their IT department. And you have IT managers that are already juggling so much other work, and all of a sudden they have to be AI experts. But what seems to be emerging is it's not really just a technical shift. It's a leadership. It's a change. It's a development. It's almost an HR issue when people, as you say, have entirely understandable concerns about what the future of their job looks like, and they're maybe resistant to integrating some of this because, on the one hand, okay, it can help them write an email, but if it puts you out of a job, do you really want to invite the wolf into the chicken shed, or the fox even? So I think there's a bit of resistance, and I think we're going to see more of that. But also the amount of busy work, the really non-productive stuff that takes up time, soaks up our intellect, and it prevents us from doing the, well, as the AI aficionados like to say, the higher level thinking that we should be released to do. That there's real merit in this idea that we can escape doing banal, mundane tasks and actually do the stuff that really matters. You talked a little bit about the skills of the future, and according to the WEF report, they have this great future jobs things that comes out every year, and they say, well, look, it's going to be creativity, flexibility, leadership, relationship building, and these are the things that are going to be hard to impossible to replace with AI, but adds real value to organizations. So I think it's two parts of the puzzle: the technical and the sociological, if you like, and getting the two in balance is really important.
Yes. What is for you an ideal start? Or you said yourself, companies are maybe struggling nowadays still with this, with finding themselves and how to kind of set it up for the employees and the IT department both. So is there a way or a good way to start?
Yeah, it really is just to experiment. What I think a lot of companies find and maybe are a little bit scared of is their employees are just doing this anyway. I mean, bluntly, we were doing it. Even back at Google, there's something called SQL queries, and they're not fun to write, sort of a database query language. It just seems like a waste of time when you want to, you know how to express it in very simple English. But there's that painful experience of maybe doing it in a language you don't understand, the translation process. And if you can automate that, that's great. And so for a lot of us, we were just playing around with the tools, and you'll find tips will be passed back and forth until the organization or the leadership has a strategy. Then I think it's a great way to experiment with it. And I would encourage everybody, whether it be ChatGPT or Gemini or any of the other many models, just have a play with this stuff. It really rewards exploring it. Now, what you really probably don't want to do is uploading company documents to it or writing something where there's some legal requirement in place for compliance. Maybe don't sort of I'd be wary of big financial decisions off the back of something that could be an hallucination. But as you learn these things, you learn the mitigating strategies and how to sort of further refine the answers and take it as an input to a larger process and not just take it at face value. So it's not that the tools will revolutionize everything. They will augment workflows that you have currently and then will continue to refine. And to my mind, it's a way of reducing friction. Weirdly enough, I say an awful lot of my job for the last 16 years of my career has been about making life simpler for people. And if we can make some of these processes simpler too, it's just less nonsense. And there's lots of ways these tools can help.
You were talking about an AI strategy. What do you mean by that? Do companies need an AI strategy?
Yeah, I think they do. The problem is going to be, as we said, some of the resistance that they have and some of the misunderstandings of what the technology is capable of. And I think we're in that little portion of inflated expectations where, you know what, it's not going to replace swathes of people, or at least not yet. It's not good enough. The idea of, people talk about the revolution that will happen for science and medicine and education, and this is all true, but it may be something as banal as supply chain and working out what the stock levels are appropriate for your warehousing when you ship stuff around the country, so it needs to be where it is at the right time. Or I'm working with an architecture firm just now that have 30 years of proposals for work. Work comes in for an architecture firm in the form almost as a competition. We have to put together a suggestion of how you might work with them. And the logistics are such that you win a small fraction of what you put time in for, but it's a considerable time sink and money sink. That this costs a lot of money. And so the idea that you can finally unlock some of the knowledge and insights that we've been promised is lurking in the data lake, the gold of the years to come. But it always required a lot of very well-structured, highly annotated data. The transformer models, which the large language models are based on, are a little more forgiving. So we're starting to see real business insights coming out of actually ingesting, processing, and then deriving insights and business value from the documentation that a lot of corporations already have at the moment.
Do I understand that correctly? That you're saying it's not just within a company, within the different departments or the several jobs there are. It's going to change the way we work, but as well, business models, whole industries are going to change a bit. Or
yeah, for sure. I'm a big fan. I'm working on my cosmology of the working world. Addiction to drawing diagrams with boxes and arrows, and I'm just sort of fascinated about how goods or services or money or energy are passed around various companies or within companies.
Okay.
And the idea that you almost want to take that step back, if you can get yourself to a bird's eye view, and I'd say systems think. And so just like an organism, I come from this biology background, I tend to see things in ecosystem terms, that there's flows of nutrients through an ecosystem, and there's flows of money and intelligence and strategy and headcount through a corporation. And if you can see what the broader picture of that, you can figure out where maybe the inefficiencies are. And so instead of radically trying to shift an entire company, turning the super tanker, there are small pain points that everybody just finds incredibly frustrating. And so the art is determining what those are and then figuring out if AI can take the pain away, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that gives you a chance if you're starting to integrate this, and it could be something about, making sure orders are processed in time, or making sure communications pass some sort of review before they're passed on to legal, so you minimize some of the back and forth of the round trip time, stuff like this. Anything that has a data set available within the company, you can start using that for fine-tuning the models that are out there. And even OpenAI internally, they have a system where so much documentation, you can imagine the amount of material and technical documents, but they have a conversational agent you can have a conversation with and then ask it for answers. So it's almost like inviting an old timer into the room with you, and they know all the secrets, all the skeletons. And then you just have a human to human style conversation without learning these bizarre SQL queries. Extracting.
Yeah. If I understand that correctly, it's actually you starting by on specific focused tasks that you want to automate, and not just a whole.
Always start
so small. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, you'll find, different organizations will have different needs, and also there's an element of who your stakeholders are, what the level of support from different teams are, and bringing people on board in a non-threatening manner. Nobody's jobs are at stake. We're just finding ways of, as I say, removing this friction. Yeah. And it's the kind of thing, if we do our job right, everybody goes away happy with more time. You're saving time, you're making money. That's the perfect. And as soon as you can prove that with these smaller projects, people are like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Yeah.
So it's a step-by-step approach, and you don't do it all at once. Yeah. And I think the broader picture is the broader view of how this will come to maybe automate or provide value on the broader scale will emerge as you go, but it becomes something that's, akin, again, you become like the Jane Goodall of your internal corporation. You sit and you observe, you look how it works, and then the broader picture sort of makes this up. So I'm a big fan of discovery calls, open-ended questions, just getting to the point. And if you speak to enough people and they all hate this one damn thing that they have to do, it could be their timesheets, it could be their expenses, whatever it is, that's the process, that's the thing you want to solve.
But it's interesting that you're mentioning it in a way. It doesn't have to be within just in a department, one process. It can be something that's overall for the company then as well. That's kind of, you need to speak to actually everyone within the company, management and all the employees to figure out what is it actually and how does the process work and where to start actually to make it the most efficient way.
Yeah, I mean, back to the ecosystem thing, but the food web literally is that. It's a mesh of relationships that can demonstrate the flow of nutrients and energy through a system. Yeah. And as much as we like to describe an organization in these very hierarchical org charts, I think reality is something closer to the web. And if you've ever done one of these, diagrams, who is who's on your side, who's maker resistant, who's actually got the most sway, who's maybe just going to sit back as an observer. You determine who your champions, who maybe you need to keep informed, who's responsible, who just needs to be kept in the loop. And I think when you start understanding those relationships in the company, it's as much about the personnel. And I think sometimes the engineering teams can forget that, really. This, you maybe saw in the talk that I gave, like this one point, this technology does not proceed at the speed of the inventions or the technical innovations. It's the speed of adoption. And that comes down to human beings, and you need the understanding of the human factor as well.
It's interesting because actually typically we're talking about technology. We think, how does it work? Where do we start with it? Where do we see the next project? It's kind of goal efficiency. But actually first we should start by talking to the employees within the company and understanding what makes the most sense.
It was something, whenever I moved teams, you would frequently, you would be encouraged to shift to a new team for a new contribution every 3 years or so at Google. And I would spend the first couple of weeks talking to as many people as I could, taking notes, again, figuring out the pain point and realizing that when you're in it, you maybe don't see it for yourself. Sometimes just the fresh perspective you come with from the outside, you see that there's a glaring efficiency to be made if something was, just to give you a very specific example, I used to consult with a lot of the external larger advertisers. I mean, these guys were spending millions on AdWords and Google Ads and their like. And we were making suggestions for technical improvements they could make to the website to speed the site up and to basically convert more, increase basket size, increase the sort of lifetime value of shoppers. It was usually online retail. And so we would have these very detailed breakdowns of the technical minutiae, and we just didn't get the adoption because they couldn't find, every exercise in a shift in a corporation is one of balancing priorities, because you've only got so much time and so much money. And if you're asking the IT department to change this on their website, there's something else they can't be doing. And I found from the team of our perspective, there was a level of frustration because we would have these very in-depth reports and it was the right thing to do. And if you show an engineer who are very logically minded, they would love it and they would see it straight away and they would get behind it. But if you were not of that very narrow focus, and if maybe you didn't understand the technicalities so much, there was that little bit of resistance. And so our job really was, we'll give you the suggestions, but then it was negotiating the relationships and trying to pitch these things in such a way that people could see the business value. And so it wasn't enough for us to say this is technically the right thing to do. Everybody wants to reduce technical debt, but it comes at the price of refactoring your code from time to time. And so we always used to tie that to the finances. We can say you can do this, it lets you pivot quicker, the return on investment predict will be the other. And then when you put it in those terms, the decisions are made based on the risk and the rewards. The risk obviously is you break something when you're trying to fix something and you set yourself back, and that's unacceptable. The reward, if you can, it always comes back to value. And value might be an improvement of how you use your staff, or it can be as blunt as how much money you make or save. But that was always got it through. It wasn't the spreadsheets of the advice. It was, here's the value you find. And same with AI. It's just, okay, we concentrate not on, here's a retrieval augmented, fine-tuned, off the cloud, in the house. large language model, it's like, all right, is I sort of say 10% of the time on getting your invoices.
Yeah. If we start, with a company, they start with this project, they set up their own, let's say, use the large language model. How do they keep maintaining it? Do they need special teams or new people on board to maintain it? And how do they? There's always this topic of the quality and that you kind of keep up to date and then you optimize. What's your take on that?
Well, there's two ways. It really comes down to the build or buy. We operate a model where we build these systems for people, and then as part of like an ongoing routine, we just look after them.
Okay.
And so there's a service level that comes with that, and so we're responsible for that. For teams internally, for themselves, something in the software world that we will call unit testing, where anytime you put a new system or program together, you will throw data at it, and you will have an expectation of, you should never get a zero back, and you should never, if you're automating 1,000 emails per minute, that's probably a bad sign. That shouldn't be happening. So whatever the system is, you stress test it. Now, the problem is if you're incorporating some kind of large language models, or if you're giving these systems, the AI, the clearance, and you feel it has the credibility to make decisions on your part, you can get stuck in loops, which could spiral quite quickly. And so we like this idea of human in the loop, where there's somebody reviewing the big decision. Okay. So before you automate everything, you're pushing it up the chain for a kind of, hopefully not a rubber stamp from somebody each one. Because they've got less busy work, then they can actually concentrate a bit more on the bigger decision. But the other element is if it's generating, it might be a personalized email campaign or something like that. You want to make absolutely sure, just, when you're in the bakery, you sort of have a little nibble of every 100th cookie. That's my excuse anyway. Just make sure the stuff is as you would expect. Have some filters in place. You maybe want to have something checking for profanity or inappropriate content if you're automating content production and stuff like this. The benefit of the AI is the automation at scale. Now, of course, you don't get the consequent ability to monitor all that by human, but you have these little sort of samples to make. So just be aware that if it's going out there with your name on it, you could be tricky. Good case in point, there was Air Canada was taken to court a little while ago because somebody was, sadly, I think a parent had died, and I had not been aware of this, but apparently, if you are recently bereaved, you can get a special rate from the airlines because it's the kind of thing that all of a sudden you need to travel within a couple of days for a funeral.
To see.
And so instead of paying the last minute massive markup, there's a procedure for this. Now, they had asked the company chatbot, the AI chatbot, about the ability to call in and get a refund on the airfare after the point of purchase because of the bereavement policy. Now, turns out that was not the official policy, and in the terms and conditions, it was you had to or speak to a representative directly, highlight the bereavement, and then go to it that way. Now, an incredibly ill thought out part of a PR disaster waiting to happen. Actually defended this decision to this guy that had gotten this advice from the chatbot. They were taken to court. They lost, and it was like, well, the chatbot had your name on it, and it told somebody something wrong, which they had the presence of mind taking a screen grab of for reference. And so this is it. So to an extent, if it has your name on it, if it's being served from your domain or your logo, whatever, that to all intents and purposes is your brand, and it's being out there. And so fess up to your mistakes when you make them and fix it. That's a data point to go in and refine that model and just be careful, and maybe it's not appropriate for some of these decisions. Or change the legalese a little bit from a compliance perspective, and you need to confirm, or at least not purely give advice from the bot itself, but then you have a citation. And some of the large language models, I would say Gemini and Perplexity are really good at giving you a citation of a document or something like that. So just always get backed up. Both as consumer and a user of this technology as well. But just be careful.
That brings us to the topic, to the other side of it. I mean, as well for companies, as we now spoke about it, but for everyone, or for people there, I mean, there is more than the sort of like these fake news, what we hear. And we're just, the system turns it around, and at the end, whether it's intentionally done by someone or just from the technology itself, but that kind of, it is not the true outcome anymore at the end. Yeah. Do you see that as the big problem, or are we overthinking it, or what's your take on that?
Oh, you're right in the money there. I mean, literally the money, because I want to say that the global scam market is an industry. If you see it in these terms, I want to say it's 25 billion a year, which seems like a ridiculous sum of money, but it's a business model for some people. And unfortunately, just as powerful as these tools are for good, you are going to have people with a different view in the world that will be using them for, ulterior motives. And, the idea that we're all frightened that our aging parents or grandparents will get a phone call saying, I'm traveling, I've lost my credit card, can you send some money? Just send it direct to one of these money transfer sites is probably going to increase. And on the one hand, you get that low-level grind where robocalls and stuff like that. And I know that was used in America. There was this really strange situation where I need to get this right, but I think a headmaster and a sports coach were having some kind of argument, and the sports coach created a faked racist rant from the headmaster, which then forensically in court was discovered, and then first the headmaster lost their job and was reinstated, and then the sports coach did. But the idea that even something as mundane as a rift between two work colleagues can turn into this thing. But you can imagine what happens to the money markets when somebody fakes an Elon Musk to say he's selling Dogecoin or something, and people have done this in the past. The potential for spear phishing, this idea of having these very directed campaigns. And there was an example of a chief financial officer at a large multinational had been invited to a video call with a grid of windows, and including one of these small windows it was somebody in the admin side, and the synthesized chief financial officer in this little window had directed the admin person to shift $25 million to another account. And they did it just purely off the credibility that this carefully curated and orchestrated fake video call had. And I think also there was this sense of, the peer pressure, you being in front of all of these pretend people, 16, whatever it was. It was a masterful act of deception, and we have to get better at it. And there are teams and tools that are coming out. I'm advising one just now called Origin that are concerned about this. So we want to make sure that in the same way you saw antiviruses emerge as the bad actors were creating these things, you're going to see tools that will potentially sit in your phone and tell you if this is a legitimate phone call from somebody, or you can invite it to listen to some calls, and if there are red flags about I've lost my wallet or I missed my plane, then you might want to be careful about it. In the same way you see sometimes if I transfer large sums of money between like my UK and my Swiss account, I'll get a little, are you sure you want this? So, biometrics, that's another good one. Two-step authentication. Always get that installed in your banking apps as well. I think they're mandatory at this point.
They are. No, but you're saying that there will come tools actually to support us and to kind of make sure that actually,
It's an arms race, but I mean, it always is. Any technology, it's pornography and deceit. And unfortunately, this is different.
The whole, actually, how we consume or entertain as a consumer as well. Where do you see there the biggest changes now coming?
So, as effectively an industry insider, I'm very excited about this because if you follow the box office and you'll read it, of course, in the press, it's not lost on us that the biggest movies of any year tend to be behind the safety of a numbered sequel. And so we have these diminishing returns of trilogies or great spans of movies, Marvel and so forth, who, maybe just kind of get very used to recycling the same material. And it's purely risk avoidance. I tell my friends in the film industry that, like it or not, we all think we're, moved by our souls to tell beautiful stories. But the industry as it is one of logistics, it's finance, it's insurance, it's risk mitigation. It's hoping you're the actor that wants to do their own stunts doesn't break their ankle jumping from one building to another, stuff like this.
Yeah.
And so, for better or worse, AI is seen as a great way of streamlining that side of things, and potentially a huge impact on visual effects as well, which contribute a large chunk of the cost. But the idea of fixing it in post, airbrushing Superman's moustache off using, very hand-drawn layers and whatnot, was prohibitively expensive in the past, but we're going to streamline some of that. But what I like about it is it also gives access to a fidelity of visual expression that was denied people that had not been to film school or does not have hundreds of thousands of dollars to rent high-end equipment. And so you can animate from storyboards. You can generate storyboards from a script. There are tools out there that automate kind of great swathes of this. And Sora from OpenAI, of course, is one of the famous ones. I think a wake-up call for a lot of people was this year's Coca-Cola advert. It was the trucks. It was the little trucks going through forests and so forth. A retread of what they've been doing for 30 years now. Purely AI created in 3 weeks. The industry didn't like it because they could see how bad it was, and people, I would be fired if I turned out this slop. But according to the sentiment analysis and having people sitting there clicking up or down and dislike buttons in these focus groups, they really liked it. It's one of the highest rated adverts that's ever come up because they're not counting the number of toes on a rabbit. The idea that a team of 17 people did it in 3 weeks is insane. Yeah. And so I think you're going to see a lot of that technology be tested on advertising campaigns and just slowly move across to the bigger budget movies and then just trickle all the way down to these smaller things. And so the idea that you could go out, you could create something with toy cars or a toy train set and then take that as an input video and run it through Runway or Pika or Sora or any of these other models and create something on the larger scale. So what I like about this is the people who will thrive in this industry are not the ones that know the technicalities of the right lens or exactly the right film stock as would have happened years and years ago. It's the people with the artistic vision. Now you need some of that language. You need to know when to use a low angle or a wide angle or a group shot and block your shots and all this kind of stuff. So film school is still incredibly valuable. You maybe just don't need as large a technical team. Yeah. But when you can reduce the cost of making a movie, you can start making more creative ones because they're inherently de-risked. Yeah. And so instead of somebody like, I want to say, what was it, Chloe Zhao, she went from Nomadland, Best Picture a few years ago, to The Eternals, I think it was, and Marvel. They get 200 million. Yeah. And I think it was the lowest box office Marvel movie at that point. And this idea of somebody just maybe a little out of their comfort zone and a lot of studio interference when you have that much money at stake. Somebody with such a great voice and such a unique movie. And I would encourage anybody to watch Nomadland. Yeah. There's more humane ways of having a person's story told without it getting mired in spectacle. And I think these tools are a great way of doing that because it's an expensive business, movie making. Yeah. And there are more stories out there to be told that we don't tend to get exposed to. So I'm very excited for new voices.
So is it not kind of narrowing it down that you're kind of as well telling the right story at the right time?
Absolutely right. There was a great time, I want to say, I think the name is Elliot Rayner. I saw him in a conference I spoke at last year, and he has this thing called story selling. Oh. And he taught me, he talks about rhetoric. So this goes back thousands of years. So you have, if you're trying to get a point across, you want to involve the logos, the ethos, and the pathos. So these are the three pillars. This is,
wow. Yeah.
So it's the logic. The thing you're trying to tell somebody, and it could be you want to sell them a holiday, or you want to install a new piece of software, or you want to ask your parents for something at Christmas. Yeah. You better get good at the storytelling. So the logic of why this thing is a good idea. The credibility, the ethos is why it makes sense. You are some sort of an expert in your field, if you like. So you're not just pulling stuff out of thin air. Okay. You've got the ability to deliver on this, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And then I think what a lot of the startups miss is the pathos, the emotional story, why people should care. And we're less adept at that, and certainly from the technical background, it's not something we really kind of get involved with. But you look at some of the Google adverts came out. They had something called Dear Sophie, and it's a father talking to his daughter through Google products over time. It's a lovely story. And then they missed the mark when they had another sort of girl writing a letter using AI to a sports hero of theirs, and it just sort of fell flat because it lacked the credibility, and the ethos was the pathos was forced. It became benthos. Pathos, that's the one. Trying to work on my Greek.
Yeah.
But it just sort of crossed the line into schmaltzy. But if you can get that balance between the logic, the credibility, and the emotion, you can get a lot done. And all of us are, as we spend less time in front of spreadsheets and cranking out rote emails, have to concentrate on these storytelling skills.
Yeah. It sounds like with these new tools, there are such many more opportunities as well. Actually, might be for startups or within a company to create new products or services. Is that as well a new way of changing whether your business model or your innovation lab?
Absolutely. And this is where the prompt engineering comes in, something that I've started to do with a tool from Google called Notebook LM. I love this thing. It sounds like you know it.
Oh, yeah.
I will download all the white papers from the big consultancy groups and I have a robotics notebook, I have a general AI, generative AI, something for the film industry, something for the fashion industry. And so I put the relevant material in there. And I have a prompt where I just say, okay, here's a state of where we are just now. Where are the opportunities for something in AI to come along? Optimize a process in a financially viable way. Is it technically feasible? Is it viable as a potential business, or again, a friction reduction? And then I can have this conversation. So it's a process of assembling a research material as you always used to do, but instead of having to read every last little, footnote of these pages and pages from all these great sources of fantastic information, you're getting that insight is being synthesized for you to an extent. And so the discovery process is similar, it's just optimized, and then the insights are kind of easier to find, but it just lets you cover more material, I think, quicker. And then if you get your prompting right, if you ask the right questions, and there's an art to this, so back to the art and technology, if you can articulate your requirements clearly. The classic thing for a prompt is it's like, give whatever model you use, give it some context. You're a fashion designer, you're a studio mogul, you're a production star, or you might be somebody in the logistics field. Give them that background, tell them what you want, and then tell them the output. And it might be a table, might be a diagram, it might be a process workflow, something like that. It might be task breakdowns. But if you kind of go to this approach and you back it up with material to derive more focused insight from, rather than just the sort of standard things, ideally your own documentation. There are ways to do that safely without sharing it all with the cloud. It's a great way of getting, like we've said before, fresh insights, actionable insights. But yeah, there's real potential there for stuff that we as humans don't see because we're so down in it. That thing I said before about getting the bird's eye view, we're kind of bad for it when we're just looking at the clock. We've got deadlines, we don't have the time to take that broader picture. AI can help with that too.
Yeah. I would like to know from your perspective, what's for you the next project with AI that you would hope to work on and to realize? Is it something that you're looking for now, maybe?
Well, something that has quite excited me, I posted on LinkedIn this morning. Please follow me on LinkedIn. I've got some good stuff there. I love to travel. And I think it's always elevated when I know a little more context. Knowing who lived here, what came from there, what it used to look like, where it's going, stuff like this. And so the best thing you can do is travel with a local expert, and they tell you where to go and the best restaurants and all this kind of thing. But the vision for something like Google Glass, which I got to try maybe 11 or 12 years ago, was wherever you are, there's an awareness of it, knows where you are, and you have this annotated view. And so the stuff that I'm seeing from Meta, particularly with this, they have Project Orion with head-up display in glasses, which are the same sort of form factor that you get with the Meta Ray-Ban, which I was quite impressed with. Google have announced Android XR last week, which is getting away from the proprietary headsets of Meta or Apple with their Vision Pro.
Yeah.
We have something that allows many manufacturers to incorporate this innovation. And so it's a mix of the head-up display, something small on your face. It can either be telling you things in your ears and you have a conversation with it, or it can be something visual, either mapped onto the stuff you're looking at or just generally. Because when you have a phone in your pocket and some sort of wearable, the smaller the better. It knows where you are. It knows where you are compass-wise, what you're looking at. Yeah. And you can just start talking to an expert in the field, wherever you are. So you get the best coffee. You understand the history. You maybe see what the ruins of Pompeii looked like before they were, wiped out by the volcano, stuff like this. And so I love this idea of walking into this augmented future. When I read a lot of science fiction, I feel a lot of the really interesting work is done by fiction writers.
Oh, yeah.
Because they sit and they think, could Snow Crash, the metaverse, the Diamond Age, nanotechnology, H.G. Wells, Time Machine, but under the sea stuff, all of that. I used to read a lot of that stuff. This year, I think my favorite book was Rainbow's End. I want to say it was 30 years ago, but it was from Werner Vinge. I think that's how you say it, but he was a computing professor that knew his stuff. And he has this incredible vision of what it's like to move in a world where you're visually augmented the whole time. Now you can take you take the contact lenses out, you can escape from it, you take the glasses off, you don't have to be there all the time. But it's there when you want it. It's an opt-in device, but it's such an empowerment. And then if you're hard of hearing, if you're blind and it's just a voice interaction, the accessibility that it gives people too, I think is a game changer. It will radically improve people's lives for the better. Some will refuse to use it, and that's fine, but I think they're going to struggle to keep up with those that choose to augment themselves too. So I'm very excited about this augmented reality, both visual and audio future, which we seem to be barreling towards just now.
Thank you very much, Rupert. I would close the episode with that vision that you have now about augmented reality. I hope for you, the audience, that you were able to get for you some new insights and new ideas and a different perspective and understanding of AI, and as well, how to use AI, where to go with it, whether in your company, in department, in your job, or maybe in the industry, or with your own proper ideas, maybe making a film yourself now with the right story.
I'm just waiting for technology to, definitely.
And thank you very much for that really inspiring interview.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for your insightful questions.